With all of the sitting and repetitive movements most of us do every day, the hips often become achy and unstable. This melt map will help you improve hip stability, mobility, and control, as well as restore some hydration to your pelvis. Enjoy and happy melting. Let's begin our map with the basic rest assess. I want you to lie on your back with your palms faced up and your arms and legs extended. Feel free to close your eyes and use your body sense to scan your masses and spaces for stuck stress. Remember, stuck stress loves to live in 3 areas: your shoulder girdle, diaphragm, and pelvis. So let's begin in your upper body and see if you have stuck stress living in your shoulder girdle that could be causing you neck pain. Notice your head. Ideally, remember, the head weights right behind the bridge of your nose, and your arms are evenly weighted masses. So notice from the back of your hand up to your shoulders. Do your arms feel balanced from left to right, or are you starting to identify stuck stress? Take a focused breath and notice your upper back. A telltale sign of stuck stress living in your shoulder girdle is feeling like all of your back weight is right up in the upper 1/3 part of your back. You might even feel your shoulder blades really pronounced on the ground. But when you use your body sense and you scan the mid-rib wall, where women define the bra line, just below the shoulder girdle, if you're noticing that that part of your back is a little bit lifted, that's another way to identify accumulated stress living in your shoulder girdle. Now remember, if you're not sure what you feel in the shoulder girdle, slowly turn your head left and right. As you turn your head, notice if you have limited range, or if you feel pain as you get to the end range, or if you feel like your shoulders move for you to turn your head. If you're noticing any of those things, they're all signs of stuck stress living in your shoulder girdle. Bring your head back to center and take a focused breath and begin to notice the shape and size of your low back curve. When stuck stress lives in our diaphragm, it can alter the shape and size of the low back curve. If you need to, you can always take one finger and place it in your navel, but don't touch your low back. Ideally, the low back curve is from the belly button to the top of the hips, but if it feels to you like you've got a big arch that starts at your pelvis and ends at your shoulder blades, that's a great way to identify stuck stress living in your diaphragm. Make a note if that's what you feel. Take a focused breath, take your hand out of your belly button, and notice your lower body. Remember, stuck stress loves to live in our pelvis, and when it lives there, we tend to have a lot of issues in our lower body, and it can displace all of the masses from the pelvis down to the feet. So remember, ideally, your pelvis is weighted on 2 evenly weighted butt cheeks. Notice if you're feeling your tailbone more weighted to the ground. The back of the thighs, those are masses. Ideally, the backs of the thighs weight to the floor evenly on both sides. Notice if one or both of your thighs aren't touching the floor at all on one or both sides. Your knees ideally are evenly lifted spaces. Your calves, evenly weighted masses. Ankles are spaces evenly off the ground. Notice if your ankle bones hit the floor. And then finally, your heels are masses. And if you had no stuck stress living in your pelvis, your feet would angle outward like a letter V, northeast, northwest. But if it feels more like your feet are turned out to the sides of the room, pointing away from the ankles, or just in 2 completely different angles, you've identified stuck stress living in your pelvis. And this can cause a lot of problems in your lower body. Now that you've scanned and I've given you lots of things to feel as opposed to what's ideal, remember there's 4 common imbalances that many of us possess that are left unaddressed from day to day. And these are the 4 that end up compressing our neck and low back unnecessarily and destabilize our core. So remember, if you lie on your back and you feel all your weight's at your shoulder girdle, your mid-back is arched off the floor, your tailbone is more weighted than butt cheeks, or the backs of your thighs feel off the floor, you should spend some time melting to restore the natural balance of your body. So I want you to try to identify one more thing, which is called autopilot inefficiency. Divide yourself into a left and a right half and scan your body from ear to heel. If you would swear that one entire side of your body feels more weighted to the ground or one leg feels longer, you've identified stuck stress in the autopilot causing interference in its ability to keep you balanced and stable. Take a nice focused breath, and when you're ready, turn on your side and come on up to sitting. Let's try a seated compression sequence. Take the roller, place it out aside of you, and then sit up onto the top of the roller. Hands on the ground, and begin to glide the base of your hips. Now these are the sit bones, and this is the area that we want to begin with. Let's get on your deep hip. I want you to take your right hand, set it along the side of the back side of the roller, and slightly tip yourself to the right side. You can even place your hands on your knees and begin gliding with your knees together to navigate your body weight. But to really get into the deep hip, take your right knee and open it out to the side. And see if you can tolerate the pressure along the outside, deep part of your hip. These are the deep hip rotators. These are the ones like piriformis. Gives you piriformis syndrome, sciatica. These are the external hip rotators. So really give these tissues a time to adapt to the compression. Then get it smaller and smaller. Wait on a spot and shear by just opening and closing the knee 3 or 4 times. Or straightening out your leg and moving your body over the roller. And then just wait here for a second. Give the tissue a moment to adapt. Let's try it on the other side. Bring your body up, set your left hand behind the roller, and same thing. Bring your knees together and begin by just gliding. So again, once you navigate your body weight and you feel comfortable, open up that left knee and gape the tissue on the side of the hip to really create the fluid flow exchange. Nice and slow, get smaller and smaller and smaller. Stop on a spot you can tolerate your pressure, and then shear by opening and closing the knee, or straightening out your leg and moving your body over the roller. And then again, once you create a shear, just wait a moment to adapt. Take your time, come back to the center. Let's try gliding our tail triangle and SI joint. You're going to place both hands behind the roller, fingertips point wide to support your shoulders, and you're going to slowly tuck your pelvis under. Once you're here, keep your feet and hands light and begin to glide your tail triangle right at the center of the back of the pelvis. Keep your elbows nice and soft so that you don't put any excess pressure on your neck. Put your feet together, slightly tip your knees to the left to get on your SI joint to glide, and then tipping them slightly to the right. This is a great way to bring some nice hydration back to the center of the back of your pelvis. Then come back to the center. Slowly take your right forearm down to the ground and open up your right knee. Let's try side hip gliding. Nice and slowly begin to glide over the side hip. Now you're a little higher up than you were with deep hip, and if you need to, just keep your hand on your thighs so that you can help navigate your body weight. Again, find an area that you can tolerate the pressure on, get smaller and smaller, stop on a spot, and then shear by opening and closing your knee. Or straighten out your leg and move your body over the roller. Now, if you want, this is an area where you could also create cross friction by just gently twisting your body forward and back. And then again, wait there for a second, give the tissue a moment to adapt, find your core, come up, and try it on the other side. Again, resting your forearm down to the ground, opening up the hip, and then gliding your side hip. The side hip are the internal hip rotators. These are the ones that really help stabilize our hips and our pelvis. So if these get full of dehydration, you're going to have a lot of hip pain and actually cause back problems as well. Again, get smaller and smaller and smaller until you just stop on a spot, and then shear it by clamming the knee in and out, or straightening out your leg and moving your body over the roller. And again, just wait there for a second and create the cross friction, that twisting action. And then wait there for a second. Give the tissue a moment to adapt. And then take your time, find your core, and come back up to sitting. You did a great job with that sequence. Let's try a little bit of front thigh glide and shear. Now this one can get really intense. I want you to take your time, place the roller just in front of your knees, rest your forearms down, and really try to get that roller as close to your knees as you can. Once you're here, watch me. I don't want your hips to drop. You have to really keep your core strong. Keep your feet on the ground and begin to glide up and down the front of your thigh. Now slightly shift your hips over to the left side. You might find there's a lot of adhesions off to the left side of that body, and then come back to the center and try it on the other side. So I'm sure that everybody's feeling this one. This is a nice area to work on, great for knee issues, hip issues, great area to work on. Come back to the center, get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then stop and shear by bending and straightening one knee about 3 times, and then try it on your left side. Now, if this is good for you, you could just do the indirect shear. But if you want to get a little bit more of an effect on this one, set both feet down to the ground and either rotate your legs in and out. But again, if you feel like you're going over a speed bump, just kind of wiggle your hips a little left to right to see if you can create the direct shear. Wait there for a second, give the tissue a moment to adapt, and then push into your arms and move the roller to the middle of your thighs. Set your arms back down and again, begin gliding. Now remember, gliding is your preparatory technique to really investigate the tissue and find barriers. So again, shift your hips a little off to the left side. If you feel like you went over a speed bump, you are introducing yourself to connective tissue dehydration. Try to bring yourself back to the middle, and again, shifting it over to the other side. Remember, try to keep your muscles relaxed. Don't tense up as you do this. Then come back to the center, get smaller and smaller, stop on a spot you can tolerate, and then bend and straighten your knees. So you really have to keep your core engaged to be able to do this to support your back and your neck. Try it on the other side, bending and straightening your knee 3 or 4 times. Now remember, if this is really intense for you to do the indirect shear, you could set both feet down and you could either rotate your thighs gently in and out or wiggle your booty a little left to right to create that direct shear. And then again, wait there for a second. Take a focused breath. Okay, so take your time. Let's begin our sequence by placing the roller under our pelvis. Nancy's going to be modifying this with the half roller, and she's also going to be using the Melt Performance Band so that she can perfect her lengthening techniques. I want you to lie on your back. Remember, you're going to find your core, lift up your hips, and bring the roller under the back of the pelvis. Now remember, to ensure that you have the roller in the right place, if you place your hands on the top of your hip bones, I always say it's kind of like you have a New York City attitude, that part of your hips are not on the roller. Another way to tell is if you bring your right and left knee into your chest, that the roller doesn't feel like it's going to slip out from underneath you. So it's in the wide, firm part of the back of your pelvis. Place your hands along the sides of the pelvis and just slowly begin to tip your knees a little right and left. Notice how we keep our heels slack to our butt cheeks with the knees just slightly angled towards our side of the roller. This way we can create the SI joint shear. So I want you to slowly tip your knees to the right and keep just that slight angle and begin to make small circles with both of your legs. So the SI joint is that small, thin joint that creates a small space between our tailbone and our pelvis. And for a lot of us, this is out of balance. Another way to create the shear is to keep your legs on the angle, keep your left leg still, and just circle the right leg. Now, very similar to upper body length moves, you don't want to hear any clicking, cracking, popping, or snapping in the hip joint. So if you do, slow down and make the movement smaller and slower. You could also bring both legs together and just slowly march your knees forward and back. This is another way to create a little fluid flow exchange right along that small but very important joint on the back of our pelvis. Then bring your legs back together, take a nice focused breath, and then slowly tip your knees slightly off to the left side and repeat the same small circles. Now, it doesn't matter which way you make the circles, I just want you to make sure that you're differentiating the motion. So try to keep your ribs from moving as you move your legs. Keep your core in your mind as being focused and controlled so that the circles stay nice and stable around the hips. You can also, again, try the one leg circling on the left side. Remember that you're going to start with a small circle and you can slowly make it bigger, but don't feel any clicking or popping in the hip. Don't create any kind of negative effect of these types of shear forces. The third way to go is to march your knees forward and back. This is the easiest way to go, and if you're new to this, this is the easiest one to try. Keep your legs slightly tipped to that side and take a focused breath. Then bring your legs back to the center. And I want you to slowly bring your legs back down to the floor. Let's try a modified tuck and tilt. Try again to gently tuck your pelvis under so that you're elongating your low back, and then just simply untucking your pelvis to land your hips to the top of the roller. Remember, when you tuck, you don't want to push into your feet or squeeze your butt cheeks. And when you tilt, you don't want your ribs to come with you. So if you need to, you could always place your hands on your ribs and just make sure that you remember tucking is elongating the low back. Tilting is actively increasing the weight of the pelvis onto the top of the roller. So one more time, tuck your pelvis under to elongate your low back, and then untuck back to the tilt. Remember, the tilt lands the pelvis to the top of the roller. Now keep that, and let's try hip to heel press. Nancy is going to use the resistant band, and watch how she places it along her foot, and this is going to help her to perfect the move. Dan and I will do it in real time. You ready, Dan? So we're going to bring that right leg up, and we're going to slowly extend our leg out. Now you want to start low so that you're ensuring that your knee is straight. That's really the secret of perfecting this move. Flex your ankle, keep your pelvis tilted and slowly bring your leg up. And you want to stop before your leg gets perpendicular or your knee thinks it wants to bend. Keep that leg straight. Take a breath in, and on an exhale, flex your foot and actively sink the back of the pelvis to the top of the roller. Then slowly externally rotate the leg for hip to heel rotate. And notice how the tensional pull goes more to the side of the leg. Take another breath in, and on an exhale, let's try hip to heel cross, slowly bringing the leg across the midline. Notice how my left leg is also coming across the midline. You take a breath in, and on an exhale, flex your foot. Kind of think about your pinky toe going towards your knee as you tilt your pelvis, and then come back to the center, and then let that leg go. Let's try that on the other side. So same thing, we'll bring our leg up, and literally like you're trying to kick the leg out at the hip and the knee so that the whole leg is straight. Make sure that the leg starts straight. Flex your foot, keep your pelvis in the tilt, and slowly bring your leg up. And remember, stop before your knee bends or you get to perpendicular. You want to find the best tensional position to create the biggest effect. Flex your ankle. On an exhale, sink the back of your pelvis into the tilt onto the top of the roller. Then let's add hip to heel rotate, rotating the leg externally so that you get the tension more to the IT band inside of the leg. Then hip to heel cross, bringing the leg across the midline, taking a breath in, and on an exhale, flex your foot, tilting the pelvis to the top of the roller. Bring the leg back to the center, and slowly bring your foot back down to the ground. I know that those can be really intense, but those three together can really make some great exchanges in the hips and really restore hip stability. Let's try to add figure 4. I want you to take your right leg and cross it over your left thigh. Now this one, I want you to make sure that you keep your right ankle flexed. It's really important to support this knee angle. Nice and slowly, find your core. Let's do it wrong to do it right. Bring both legs in towards your chest and go as far as you can until you feel a really big stretch on the back of your right hip. I'm sure you guys are really feeling that one, yeah? And it's a great stretch to have, but we don't want to just stretch muscle. We want to actually rehydrate the hip joint. So I want you to take your left hand and either place it on your right foot or behind your left thigh. And then I want you to take your right hand in front of your leg, and I want you to push that right leg away from you until your left thigh feels perpendicular to the roller. Once you're there, take a breath in, and on an exhale, in equal timing, you push your thigh up and away as you use your left leg to press into the right ankle, and then tilt your pelvis onto the top of the roller, but keep your ribs out of that tilt. Take a subtle inhale, ease back some pressure, and then exhale, create your push-pull, and then slowly set your left foot back down to the ground. Let's try that same move on the other side. Remember, crossing the left ankle over the right thigh to keep your left ankle flexed. Find your core, and again, let's bring the knee all the way into the chest until you feel a big stretch against the outside of your right hip. Now, this can be a really great way to create some nice release in the muscles of your hip, but remember, we want to rehydrate the hip joint. So again, place your hand either on the left foot or behind the right thigh. Left hand goes in front of your left leg, and again, you're reaching and pushing that thigh up and away from you until your right leg feels perpendicular to the roller. Take a breath in, and in equal timing, push-pull, so your right knee is coming into your left ankle, and tilt your pelvis on the top of the roller. Inhale, ease back a little pressure, and then again, push-pull, tilting the pelvis as you create that push-pull with the legs. That's great. Bring your knees into your chest and slowly roll the roller out from underneath your pelvis. Lie flat on your back, palms faced up, arms and legs extended, and let's reassess. Take a nice focused breath. Tune into your masses and spaces and notice what that sequence did. Now at the beginning, when we started, remember we pointed out some common imbalances and we just tried to release some good hydration back to the pelvis. If at the beginning you were feeling a lot of tailbone on the ground, notice if your butt cheeks are more settled to the floor or if the back of the thighs have come to the ground. Those are great direct techniques, and that's a great way to restore some fluid flow back to the pelvis. But you might also notice that that big arch in your back is much less. If you've really released your own low back, you'll feel a more small, distinctive space closer to the pelvis rather than under the ribs. How do you guys feel with this one? Did you make some changes, Dan? I love that. Now you might also notice that your upper back weight is also more relaxed. And what's crazy about the lower body sequence, slowly turn your head left and right. Even though we didn't do anything to your upper body, you might notice that by releasing fluid flow to your torso, your neck has freed up in its range, maybe you've decreased pain, or your shoulders are more relaxed. Also, divide yourself into a left and a right half. By restoring some stability to your pelvis and reacquiring some connection for our center of gravity, your autopilot might also feel like it's gone back into balance. So if you feel like you're more balanced from left to right, you've done a great job with this sequence. Well done.